Hello and welcome to the Incredible Hulk podcast. And today we're discussing the season 4 story called Half Nelson, which is about midget wrestling, amongst other things. It was written by Andrew Schneider and directed by Barry Crane, co-starring Tommy Madden as Buster Caldwell, H.B. Haggerty as Gregor, Paul Henry Itkin as Channing, David Himes as Kelly, and Joe Foreman as the promoter. And of course, Elaine Joyce as Mitzi. She's popped up in the Hulk before. The sort of love interest, Elaine. And of course, starred, the regular crew of Bill Bixby as David Banner, Lou Ferrigno as the Incredible Hulk, and Jack Colvin as Mr. Jack McGee. And would you like to start, you guys, any of you, just start with like the beginning bit, the sort of setup of this particular adventure?
Yeah, well, David happens to find himself in a situation where he's surrounded by trouble, and there's a little man who helps him out of his little trouble and offers him a place to stay and perhaps even work with the wrestlers. Yeah, here's Alex.
Yeah, it's a little bit similar to that boxing episode with Martin Kove from the Karate Kid, in some ways. This was one of the main reasons why I like this episode is because it is actually sensitive to midgets, little people, whatever the terminology is. I was taught, midget and dwarf unless they insist on little people. Unfortunately, the midget wrestler is a little bit of a bragging, and he gets David in trouble and actually attacked because he's too confident. I understand that he has to be, loud to be heard in a way, especially back then. But it also was a little strange that they sort of had this typical blonde bombshell that was this woman who looked like the typical bombshell that was popular in a lot of the TV shows and movies of the time. But she wasn't really a nice person per se.
No.
And then we can get to one of the Hulk outs that, the bigger wrestler was talking about morals, but then he's beating up people. So I'm not quite sure where he thinks he has the high ground per se. And I don't remember in the story saying that he was married to her or anything like that.
I think they were.
Yeah, well, like I said, I don't remember if they were or not. So there was some interesting, dialogue per se in the episode. I didn't think the story was that great. But like I said, I mean, David has something to hide. The midget wrestler is not confident enough, but at the end of the story, he starts fixing things. He has the brunette woman that's hosting the party that he probably should actually date. For the midget wrestler, I forgot his name now. Buster?
Yeah, Buster.
So, I mean, they had some interesting points, but the story itself was a little, wasn't too impressive. The other weird thing I noticed was it did seem to have a lot of the, background music from, an ABC show, which was a little strange. But I know I saw it in other ABC shows of the time, so it was very, very similar.
It's clear on this, it's definitely, it seems to be like the trouble aspect of it. It's not only just that bald-headed wrestler, Gregor is called, who's insanely jealous of Buster talking to his lady, But you've got the other sideline where, because Buster is a bit of a fantasist and likes to tell little lies, you know, and but can land people in a lot of trouble because of his mouth, you know, and of course does land David in a lot of bother because there's these two sort of thug guys going around, two heavies, and it appears that there's some money that's being pilfered around, stolen money, which they want to get their hands on, and they believe that Buster knows the whereabouts of it. I think he's been shooting his mouth off to too many people. So therefore, that's another sort of side plot where they're after him. They see him sort of being friendly with David, and they're going to sort of lean on him as well. Which brings us to this moment where I think Buster says, you know, stick around a while. I'll put you out. He puts David up in his flat for a while, I think, and he's promising a little, you know, some money after he's done his match and everything. But he asks him to come along and sort of watch him fight. And David seems quite amused by all the antics and the show, you know, the sort of showmanship of it and everything. And so that's all. And so they're about to leave when they bump into that lady you mentioned earlier on, Alex Marsha, her name is, his friend, who's got a thing for him, I think, you know, and but I think he's still sort of blinkered by the blonde bombshell and thinks he can sort of set his heights higher in that sense. Not thinking about this unrequited love of Marsha, I think. You know, it's got...
Well, she hasn't really, you know, the other lady hasn't really put the moves on him. She's just sort of wistfully watching from afar, that sort of thing. And Buster isn't paying attention to the subtle clues. I mean, it's obvious that he's going to have to be, you know, hit in the face with this romance for it to, you know, to even slightly come to fruition, right?
Yeah, he's not really reading the signs right. That's true. He's not reading the signs right with Marsha, and he's certainly reading the signs wrong.
Not real subtle. I mean, he's a wrestler for crying out loud. He doesn't have a lot of the subtlety figured out. Anyway,
that's true. Yeah. So anyway, what happens? Marsha offers to. She's having a party, and she asked David to come along as well. And David sort of slightly, you know, all right, okay. And do you want to come to the party? He said, okay, yeah, if whatever you want to do, Buster, you know. So they end up going the next day to it, but being, you know, spied on by those two blokes in the car opposite, waiting for them to come back out again to get them.
Yeah.
So anyway, David goes in there, you know, into the room, and of course it's filled with little people, you know, and he's the tallest man in the room, as it were.
Sure.
And maybe he feels, I don't know if he takes it very well. He's very good with it and everything. I think because he says to Buster, Buster says, do you feel out of place? He says, no, I think it's probably the opposite or something like that. David says, you know, I'm more worried about what they're thinking and that, whatever. And, you know, he's taking it in his stride, really. And so anyway, there comes a point where Marsha, a couple of friends come up to her and stuff and say, oh, we're out of liquor or whatever it is. And David says, don't stay where you are. Don't worry. I'll go out to the drugstore, to the liquor store and get some more for you. So that means that's the chance where he goes, you know, he leaves the apartment. The boys see him and they say, let's grab him. And the neighbours won't help him at all, will they? He's banging on their doors and they're all locking their doors on him and help me, he goes, you know. And they're all hiding. And they manage to catch up with him and beat him up and throw him over the balcony on the steps there and into the trash.
And when he hits the trash, he becomes the Hulk.
And he hulks out, yes. And he does a really does a really good bit where they're trying to get away in the car.
Yeah.
Picks up, rips out a traffic
street
pole
sign.
or something. Was it parking meter pole?
He rips off a street sign.
Yeah, and launches it at the car, and it ends up impaling the back of the car.
Yeah, it goes right through the boot of the car and right into the ground below.
Yeah, there's a big pole sticking out of the car as they fly off.
Yeah, and they probably don't make it very far because it kind of goes into
Well, it's
the
full.
ground.
It's weighing it down because it's like big bit of concrete underneath it or earth under it, where it's being buried in the ground. So it must weigh, must weigh a bit. In real life, I mean, it must weigh a bit. So anyway, they end up, zooming off, as it were. And there's a nice little bit here where the small couples come out. There's a husband and wife, and the little fella starts giving as good as he gets to the Hulk, as the Hulk picks up the little woman and is looking at her going, "This is new. What's this?"
Yeah.
The Hulk sort of looking at her and going, "You look like a child, but you're a woman," and he doesn't know what's quite to make of it. He's sort of studying her, and the husband's like going, "Leave my wife alone. Get off her." And I think he throws something at him, doesn't he? It was something.
Yeah.
And he puts him down. He puts her down, and she goes, "Oh, my hero!" To the husband, and he runs off. Yeah, the Hulk runs off. He's had enough. That was quite a nice little moment there. Yeah.
Yeah, that was cute. Here's Alex.
I like I said, that was a little odd to me, but I guess they had to put that in. I don't know. I mean, like I said, the story I didn't find that impressive in terms of having, sort of a different cast and not having the exact same midgets that you see like from Wizard of Oz, or there was like 30 years of like the exact same cast, that were in Under the Rainbow movie with Carrie Fisher and Buck Rogers as well. They had an episode from 1981 where they had a lot of the same midgets. And also they had the black midget. His name is Tony Cox. And he's in his 60s now. I think he's semi-retired. And he was the helper, the other guy in the movie from the Bad Santa series. And his name is Tony Cox. And he's a black midget. He has a goatee and a mustache. And,
yes, I remember him. I remember him actually.
Yeah, and it was kind of funny. The other day, one of the local American networks showed, an episode from 1981 that was Buck Rogers, and I forgot that he looked so young. Just like when he was in Greatest American Hero as well. So it was interesting in seeing a cast that you don't see everywhere. But as far as the story, I thought it was a little silly. But yeah, after that, the guy that was sweeping, that made sure to lock the doors and not help David out, he's talking to McGee, and they're sort of doing the city talk of how much money you're going to get me, and all that junk.
He was the chicken that hid behind the door and wouldn't help David.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was even wondering if it was the same street as a couple episodes from Beretta, because it was starting to remind me of that. But I didn't immediately look at my collection to see if it was the exact same set, as a lot of networks reuse the same sets.
Well, I know that the wrestling arena was used several times in the Hulk. It's the same one they used in Boxing Story, and it's exactly the same place.
It is.
They've used it on a couple of other things as well. It's the same location. I don't know where it is, but it's some big arena in LA, I would think, somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if they used it in other movies, but yeah, the
So it
Hulk.
pops up in the Hulk quite a bit. Yeah, I've seen it a few times.
Yeah.
It's exactly.
Well, yeah, I mean,
yeah. They used it
yeah,
for the concert one, the one with the rock concert. That was the same place, I think.
yeah. It was,
They've
yeah.
used it for the boxing one.
Yeah.
They've used it for the psychic episode, I think, when he's in the ring there with the lad. It's the same place. Yeah, it's been quite a lot.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, yeah, I mean, people forget too that not every studio and not every producer has the money to rebuild everything from scratch. So most networks, unless they're going to throw a lot of money at a show, they have to reuse the same props and costumes and sets, because this was before the age where every show had $1 million or more an episode, and they didn't have that for the Hulk. So
no, that's true. The next day, after all that chaos that happened with the Hulk out and everything, David and Buster are having breakfast at this diner, or maybe it's just the canteen in the arena. I don't know, for the wrestlers. But anyway, they're having breakfast, and there's one moment where David goes to get a newspaper, and so that they can sort of check Buster's review of his fight, and that he likes to read the dailies and that. And while he's away, this sort of shifty waiter comes up to Buster, and obviously knows about this money, this stolen money thing. He said, "What do you know about that? Come on, Buster, you can tell me. You've known me for years." And Buster, again, landing people in trouble, not thinking before he speaks, mentions that David is fencing money.
oh.
Yeah.
And
what does the guy do? Go around the corner on the old phone and tells the guys about it. So instantly now David didn't bother again. Why did he have to say that?
Well, yeah, I mean, this is the other, question too. Like the brunette woman in the show at the party said, life is difficult if you're short. I'm short. I'm not a midget, but I'm short. And life is difficult. I mean, that's we're talking about 1978, where most people were 6 feet tall, and a lot of things were built for people that were, around 6 feet tall. But that doesn't mean you start, building up a persona that you don't realize what you're doing and getting other people in trouble. And that's kind of what this Buster does. Later on in the show, he kind of admits that he's got a huge mouth.
He kind of almost lives sort of like a little bit like a fantasist life in a way.
Well, no, he
creates these sort of flies and creates this kind of sort of these scenarios. I don't know why, to make himself look big, or metaphorically. I mean,
Well, yeah, I mean, it's one thing if you're in the wrestling ring and you have to bring in fans or whatever, you might exaggerate a little bit. But the thing is, he's not in the ring all the time. So he's kind of like he's putting up a front that he's so tough and so, connected. And he admits to David toward the end of the story that, he doesn't really know anybody. But that's not what he was saying when he first met David. When he first met David, he's like, "Oh, I can get you a job. I know tons of people," and all that.
Anyway, those two thugs from earlier on still can't remove the pole from the car. So they've given up on that. They said, "What are we going to tell the insurance company? That a green man threw a pole at us, and
No, it was the rental company. That was a rental car.
A rental company, that's it. Yeah. What are we going to tell the rental company? Yeah. But they're worried about that. But they're saying now they're going to go to the match that night because Buster's fighting the match that evening.
Yeah.
And they're going to try and grab Buster then, and all that. So they're plotting, to go there and that. McGee is going to go there as well because he was tipped off by that eyewitness earlier on. They gave the money to. So he's heading there as well. So that sort of takes care of that bit. Anyway, David tells Buster he needs to leave but he just asks if they could give him a few dollars to sort of help him. But Buster, of course, says, yeah, no problem, man, but please wait till after the match because I get some endorsements paid and I'll give you the money then. So that means David has to hang around again, and that's how he gets involved in the rest of the story.
Yeah.
And
but there were no endorsements, and there were no.
No, we find out later on that he was made all that up. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that was all part of that.
It's interesting. The wake-up call he gets is from Mitzi, who calls him out and says, why do you say so much jive and lies and that? And he gets really wounded by that, doesn't he? But it gives him a kind of wake-up call, She comes into the dressing room and says it to him, and he gets really, really upset, and he sort of has to go to her and everything. She ends up leaving. So the McGee's arrived, the two baddies have arrived, so we see them all entering.
And the arena's full of people, full of fans.
Oh, it's chock-a-block, yeah. And it's all a big buzz there, big buzz. And the match has started. Yeah, they've got into a couple of warm-up fights first with the taller people and stuff.
Yeah,
he's obviously the headliner at the end, I would think, Buster. So they've got a couple of warm-up matches to start it off. And David joins Buster in.
Isn't Gregor fighting in one of the?
He's due to fight. Yeah, that's right. David joins Buster in the little dressing room there, and after that little fallout with Mitzi, Buster confesses he's been fooling himself and others. And he reveals his real name's not Buster Caldwell; it's Stephen Caldwell, who happens to be the associate producer of the series. So again, that's one of Kenneth Johnson's in-jokes of using real names.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious!
From the series. Yeah, Stephen Caldwell is the associate producer of the Hulk. So there we are. That's another one, name drop. So it's blatantly the case there.
That's funny. Maybe Stephen even goes by Caldwell Buster.
Yeah, David quizzes Buster on the men who attacked him earlier, and he says, he wouldn't have happened to said anything to them that may, cause a bit of a bother. He says, yeah, they think you're fencing money, man. We've got to get out of here. Which, of course, he created that lie, by the way.
Yeah. Buster did a lot of his own damage.
Yeah. So now, David's got frantic. He's thinking, how am I going to get? I've got to get out of here now. I can't hang around now to the end of the match. So he ends up, running out, and Gregor bumps into Mitzi, and he's raging jealous, and he says, where is he? I'll rip his arms out. And so he's in there. But of course he isn't. But David's in there. But David now has dressed up as a wrestler. He's got a mask on and everything, and a leotard. Yeah.
Which is just lucky because McGee just showed up.
McGee comes in as well. Yeah, that's right.
And McGee opens the door, and these other two guys push him aside and burst in, and then something happens, and the mask rips, and boom! It's
Gregor realizes that the guy that he's talking to in the locker room is not the wrestler that he thinks it is. So that's when David has to get out. So he pushes them out of the way, and he runs out. But he's heading towards the ring, unfortunately, to warn Buster, about the two thugs. But he's in hot pursuit. Gregor's after him, and ends up getting him in the ring and roughing him up. And McGee is saying, "Don't do that to him. He's dangerous. You don't know what will happen."
Oh yeah, that's right. And then
he knows he's going to Hulk out. He knows who it is. He knows it's the John Doe. Don't do that to him. You'll upset him.
You don't know
what he will do. But he won't stop. He's got him in a headlock and everything, and he's throwing him around the ring, and then when then he's trying to get the mask off him. That's right. He's trying to get his mask off, and that makes him Hulk out, So he hulks out while he's holding him, right in the middle of the ring in front of thousands of people, which is quite amusing.
Yeah.
And launches Gregor up onto the balcony, I think. He's hanging on the balcony, above. And and he comes back to help Buster, who is now being interrogated by the two guys. And he busts through the door there, and I think one of those punching bag things, isn't it? The ones they use for training.
Yeah.
He shoves it at one of them. He goes flying.
Yep. And I mean, the Hulk has picked one of those up and thrown it around. The Hulk is stronger than most of the workout equipment in the world. At one point or another throughout the whole television series, The Incredible Hulk, he has thrown weights around, he has thrown punching bags around, he has thrown like that Nautilus equipment around. He's the Hulk is stronger than the weight equipment that Lou Ferrigno used to get big. It's awesome. It's awesome.
Yeah. So anyway, he does his bit, and the Hulk busts, and McGee just shows up at the nick of time. He's always a bit late, isn't he? Just to see
late for the reveal. Yes, indeed.
Just for the moment where he sees the Hulk, but the Hulk always gets away before he can do anything. So he busts through the wall and off he goes, and McGee's standing going, I was so close again, damn it. That's it. He got away again. Yeah.
Yeah. Rawr.
All he can do is look on in despair, Yeah. So anyway, that ends ends the action part of it anyway, so sort of the end of that bit. The next day, we see a little goodbye with Buster and David. And Buster has decided to hang up his wrestling leotard and go back to college to study. Because originally he wanted to study medicine, but he's going to go in a different path now, I think. He doesn't say what, but he said, I think I'll go back to college. So he's kind of learned his lesson, I think, really, that the wrestling got him and others in a lot of bother, yeah. So David's happy about that, and off he goes, mate. And it's all the way.
Yeah, that was it. Was a more communicative exit than you usually gets. There was a lot
he actually looks. He has a little sort of satisfied look on his face at the end of that one, doesn't he? It's a bit more of a happy ending. You think, I've done something good there, He doesn't walk off sad. So it was a nicer ending than normal. So where he's heading next, who knows?
So what's really cool is that this employed many of the little people that were put into some of the Star Wars things. You recognize some of their faces from conventions or from, their IMDb or whatever. So that was cool.
Some of them play the Ewoks and stuff that were in that.
Some of them have played in the Star Wars franchises. I mean, none of them were as big as your British little people in the Star Wars universe, but But it was
some of them were, some of the actors in this were just smaller than average people, weren't they? They weren't dwarfs or anything. Buster was a dwarf, but some of them were just more small, sort of what they used to call midgets back in the day. But they were just like lower, like below 5 foot or whatever. They were classed as small people or 4 foot, But they weren't quite, they weren't. They looked just like a small scale down adult, big adults really.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean. It was a different condition, I think.
Yep.
But they didn't have dwarfism or anything like that, like he did, Especially the woman that was in it. She just like a smaller woman, really. Anyway, it was interesting to see that because you didn't see it too often.
And it was good that they left it ambiguous whether or not wrestling was a real sport. That was good, because a lot of people in the wrestling community, I have my doubts as to whether or not it is a real sport. But in this episode, they left it ambiguous.
I believe it may have been for a while. I don't know if it was on that ever that big and popular, like as they showed it on the episode, that they were filling out huge arenas. I think it would have been a much smaller kind of scale, maybe, kind of maybe more underground. I don't know. I wouldn't seen it. I don't think it was as hugely popular as mainstream wrestling or anything.
I don't really know.
But I think it did exist. Because obviously
it does exist.
These stories are always based on some kind of reality,
It does exist.
It does exist, yeah.
Yeah, I just, you asked a question whether or not it was as big as mainstream. Well, no, it's not as well sponsored or whatever as mainstream. But also, I don't know how big it is. So it's a good question.
Anyway, that was Half Nelson, and it is a quirky episode, wasn't it?
Yeah.
A little bit different to the norm, which is quite good now and again when they threw things like that in. Instead of like the very intense dramas that they had on there, we had a bit more of a lighter episode in a way. So that was cool, yeah. So I hope you guys enjoyed this one, and I'd like to thank my friends here for joining me on it. Thank you, Sue, and thank you, Alex.
Yep.
Thank you. Thanks.
And we'll see you all again, guys, in another Incredible Hulk podcast. Until then, of course, don't Hulk out.